Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Friday, October 15th, 2021. I'm Andrew Hanson alongside Josh Crash Davis. And it being Friday the 15th, that's a big day because we're 2 days away from week 6, which gives us a chance to continue our hot streak. And just as importantly, big day for you tomorrow, Crash. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yep. Turning 39 tomorrow, so almost at the big 4-0.
Excellent. Yeah, enjoy it while you can. And speaking of birthdays, one of our members had a really nice birthday present last night with the big winnings on the showdown in FanDuel. JP Wild, happy birthday to you. We had a lot of members win hundreds, even into the thousands. Great start to week 6 with our Tampa Bay Philly lineups, Josh. We got to try to keep it going.
Yeah, that was huge. That was a monster night, and we're going to keep it going this weekend. I'm confident in that for sure.
Excellent. All right, well, let's go position by position here on the main slate. And let's start with quarterbacks like we often do and see if we can build some more winners.
Yeah, so I'm going to start up at the top. I'm going to start with Patrick Mahomes, 8,300 on DraftKings. You know, he had a very un-Mahomes-like game Sunday night. You know, he threw 2 interceptions against Buffalo. Really just unlucky. One of them bounced right through Tyreek Hill's hands and was ran back for a pick 6. The other one was deflected in the air by the defensive end Rousseau from Buffalo, and he, knocked it up in the air and then caught it and intercepted it himself. So just kind of 2 fluky interceptions in a way. But he's got a really good matchup this week against Washington. They're 31st, allowed the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And so I just look for him to bounce back in a big way this week. He'll probably be pretty chalky, but I just really think that he's going to have a big game.
Yeah, I like him to bounce back as well. I mean, I think the key word here is motivation. They're 2-3. They really just got outworked with the Bills there in prime time, and they can't keep messing around here. So they got to take advantage of this. Big favorites, big total, 54.5, biggest total on the board. By the way, I one thing I like about this slate, Josh, there's only 10 games on the main slate.
True.
7 early ones, 3 late ones, because we've got some bye teams. We've got the overseas game.
Yeah.
And 3 of the 10 are totals over 50. And again, this is the highest on the board. So we're going to have a lot of exposure to it at these different positions.
Definitely.
Now, if you want to go to one of the other big total games, which I like, that is Chargers and Baltimore, 51.5. And the reason I want to start with this game is because Justin Herbert is involved. And he gets that 29th ranked Baltimore pass defense. You save exactly $1,000 from Mahomes on DraftKings if you go with Herbert. Look what Carson Wentz just did to Baltimore, 402 yards. And Herbert has been hot.
Yeah.
398 last week, 4 touchdowns against Cleveland. His last 3 games, 11 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. He's run one in for a score. That sounds a lot like Tom Brady's start to the season.
Yeah.
He's just in the groove. Again, great matchup. So I'm going to put him in a bunch of lineups.
Yeah. No, I really like Herbert. He's been on a tear. I'm well aware of how he's done. A couple weeks ago, my wife and I played each other in our season-long fantasy games, and of course, he put up a huge number against me. So.
Of course.
Yeah. That's how it works out. But yeah, Herbert's been on fire. He really has.
All right. Who's next if we want to save even more money?
Yeah, so it's going to be, for me, it's going to be Matthew Stafford. He's 6,700 on DraftKings. He's had a pair of, I guess, pretty decent games the last 2 weeks, but haven't been as strong as his, starts earlier this year. And I think I'm going to look for him to have a bigger game this week, more like what he had at the beginning of the year, going up against the Giants, who are 25th in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. And Pro Football Focus has Stafford projected to be the 6th highest scoring quarterback on the slate. I actually think he's going to exceed those expectations just because, he's kind of had a little bit of a letdown the last couple of weeks. And I just expect this to be a much better matchup for him. So I like Matthew Stafford this week.
Yeah, he's not going to go many weeks in a row without multiple touchdowns. So
No.
could be the ideal spot for him. Now, I want to jump to some of the value quarterbacks and discuss a couple of them. I want to start with Carson Wentz, 5,400 on DraftKings. I just mentioned that 400-yard performance against Baltimore. Now he gets Houston, which is bad across the board. And Indianapolis, 10-point favorites. The total here is only 43.5. So the question is, with Houston being 26th against the run, do they just hand it off to Taylor and company? Does Wentz not get quite as much volume? We also have to wonder about T.Y. Hilton. Is he going to be back in the mix, which could certainly make things interesting? And if we're looking in this tier of cheaper quarterbacks, my other concern with Wentz is, I think he may be popular out of that group. Not that he'll have a huge ownership percentage, but are they going to zero in based on that result last week and the matchup? So I've got another value guy I want to mention here in a minute, but the point is that Wentz is on my radar. If I'm going to play one lineup, he's not going to be in it on DraftKings, but if I play multiple, I'm definitely considering him.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Wentz on Monday night. A lot of people, I think, have forgotten about how good Wentz was at one point in his career. I mean, he was looking at an MVP type season before he got hurt several years back. And he really played at that kind of a level on Monday night. So I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, everything got derailed there. He definitely is trending in the right direction, though, now.
Yep. I think he's starting to figure it out. So for me, for my value play at quarterback, I'm looking at Taylor Heinicke. He had his worst start of the year last week against New Orleans after 3 pretty strong performances in a row against the Giants, the Bills, and the Falcons. And this week he's going up against the Kansas City defense that's allowed the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks and the 4th most, actually the most fantasy points to quarterbacks and the 4th most passing yards per game at 296.4. So it's a really good matchup for Heinicke. It's probably going to be a shootout, I would think. Kansas City's defense has really struggled, especially without Chris Jones, and he's supposed to be out again this week. So probably my top value quarterback for the slate in week 6.
Yeah, I like that play as well. I mean, I definitely like him more than Wentz in that price range. I also like, some people might not notice or be aware of the floor for his running here lately. He's shown it the last 2 games, at least 5 carries with at least 40 yards.
Yeah.
That's a nice little bonus. And again, highest total on the board. We saw what Josh Allen as a mobile quarterback did against them.
Right.
He's not at that level yet, but he did throw it 41 times last week in that off performance. I like that as well. That's a good sign in my book.
Yeah, that's definitely a good sign.
And by the way, stat of the week here, both Baltimore and Kansas City, 2 of these pass defenses that we're targeting, they give up 296.4 yards per game passing. So that could be the key number connecting Herbert and Heinicke as our 2 of our best plays.
Exact same number. That's interesting.
Yeah. All right. Last guy for me here, last quarterback before we move to the next position, Mac Jones, 5,200 on DraftKings. He's got the Cowboys. And speaking of rankings, they're 32nd in the league, Josh, a league of 32 teams, allowing over 300 yards passing per game. So that's a pretty good combination for such a cheap quarterback.
Right.
And what I like about Mac Jones at that price range is that he's been pretty solid and consistent. His last 3 DraftKings outings, 14, 17, and 12 DraftKings points. So you're right around 3x, which is what you're looking for. And he's one of these guys that's really kind of game script dependent. And it's a perfect little example of one of the key foundational factors when you're evaluating quarterbacks and DFS players in NFL. You got to look at that game script, project it. So look at what happened in these losses that they've had recently against New Orleans and Tampa. He threw it 51 times and 40 times. Then last week they beat Houston. He only throws it 30 times. And we know that Bill Belichick's formula is to run it and play defense,
right?
Especially with this team that he has. But they're playing the Cowboys. They're 3-point underdogs, and this is the other game that has a total over 50 at 50.5. So if that game script plays out where Dallas gets a lead, this is going to be a week where New England has to pass it probably more than they want. So with them passing it a bunch in that good matchup, I'm willing to put some lineups out there with him at 5,200.
Yeah. And I mean, even when Daniel Jones got hurt last week, Mike Glennon came in and did pretty well against Dallas's defense. So, I mean, if Mike Glennon can do that, then that Mac Jones should be able to have his way with that defense.
Oh, it. Absolutely. Great. Good point. All right. So let's go to running backs here and figure out how we want to attack that position. If you pay up this week, specifically on DraftKings, where are you looking there?
For me, I'm looking at the current second leading fantasy running or halfback this year, 7,900 on DraftKings. It's Austin Ekeler from the Los Angeles Chargers. There's no Derrick Henry on this slate, so there's going to be more variance, I think, at the top with the ownership for halfbacks this week. But like I said, he's been the clear second best halfback in fantasy this year, and he has another great matchup this week against the Ravens, who are they've allowed the fifth most fantasy points to halfbacks. He's scored 6 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, 3 rushing and 3 receiving. And I think he'll probably be the highest owned, high-priced halfback on the slate. But he scored 33 and 32 fantasy points in his last 2 games, and I think he'll pick up right off where he left off the last couple of weeks today or on Sunday.
Yeah, and you've been on him, so great calls with him. Talking about floors, I really like his receiving floor. And he gets a lot of targets, and he catches almost all of them. Last 4 games, 25 targets, he's caught 23 of them, including those 3 touchdowns that you mentioned. So basically, he's averaging 6 receptions a game. So you're looking at about a 10-point floor in PPR just from his receptions.
True. Yeah.
So
good point.
Ekeler, definitely worth a look. Now, my first guy I'm going to mention here, I'm going to go a little bit more mid-tier, Kareem Hunt. He'll be popular, but, with NFL DFS, you can go chalky here with a bunch of guys, especially if you're playing cash. But even in GPPs, you need to get these guys in there regardless of the fact that they're chalky because, a guy like Hunt in this situation, about as good as you can get because the big news, of course, is that Chubb is out. But this isn't like some backup that we're not sure what he's going to be like, what's going to happen if he has a big workload. I mean, he's had 3 straight games between 16 and 17 touches. So he's ready for the big workload. He's got a nose for the end zone. He's got 5 of those already on the season. And Arizona's number 29 against the run, which is a little bit surprising since they're 5-0. But great matchup on paper, great workload. And, oh, by the way, Pro Football Focus ranks Cleveland as having a 96% run blocking advantage against Arizona, which is incredible. So I'm willing to invest in Hunt, and I don't care about the ownership.
Yeah, he's just put up really good numbers for any fantasy halfback. Doesn't matter if they're a starter or a backup. I mean, as a backup, he's got 5 rushing touchdowns on the season, and he's got 2 games where he scored over 25 fantasy points, as a backup. So he's just really been crushing it, and he would definitely be one of my top options in the mid-tier as well.
Excellent. Okay, who else are you considering?
I'm looking at Jonathan Taylor. I've always liked Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, he's a Wisconsin Badgers fan. 6,600 on DraftKings. He's coming off his best start of the year, Monday night in Baltimore. Going back home against Houston, they've allowed the 7th most rushing yards per game at 134.8. He's become the clear, obvious number 1 back in Indy, and he's had 3 receptions in each of his last 2 games. And obviously he had that 76-yard touchdown reception to start the game Monday night. So if he can do something like that, he should have another monster game this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely in a great spot. Awesome matchup. Sometimes when you get these great matchups, but it's, across the board against a team like Houston that's bad defensively, I just get nervous. And that's why I mentioned the concerns about Wentz. His downside is if Taylor punches in a couple times, and Taylor has to deal with that depth, those other guys who could get involved, Hines and Mack. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I hesitate about guys like that. Another guy who's in that spot this week is Joe Mixon against Detroit.
Yeah.
Where they're bad against the run. So I do like his spot. He's a little bit banged up with the ankle.
Mm-hmm.
So does Mixon crush them, or is it the passing game with Burrow? Does he go nuts? So sometimes that prompts you, if you're going to go heavy on a guy like that, I would
Right.
suggest putting one lineup in with the quarterback just in
Yeah,
case. So
that's good.
uh,
Good.
I'll go with one more running back here before we shift off, and I'm going to go with the value play. And I don't know if you're going to like this because I know you're a Packers guy, but Khalil Herbert, 4,600 on DraftKings. Now, there's a bunch of value plays to consider with running backs with these injuries. We've got Hubbard, we've got Devontae Booker, we've got Darrell
Mm-hmm.
Williams for Kansas City. Those guys are all worth considering, and we will, work with our lineups here to finalize them for the members. If you're not familiar, we give out full lineups on FanDuel and Yahoo, both cash lineups and GPP. So we will finalize those about 45 minutes before kickoff and give those out to the members. But one other guy I do want to mention here today is Khalil Herbert because he's 4,600. I think he'll be a little bit lower owned than some of those other guys I just mentioned, and he's
Mm-hmm.
cheaper. I don't think he has a huge ceiling here. He's a bit of an unknown because he's filling in for Damian Williams, who's now on the COVID list. We're recording this on Friday night, so we think he's going to be out, and Herbert's going to be
Right.
the guy. They've got Ryan Nall back there, but he's not going to get a bunch of touches, I don't think. So
Mm-hmm.
Herbert last week against Vegas, 18 carries, 75 yards. I watched the tape. I thought he looked good, quick, aggressive, and Pro Football Focus gives the Bears a 24% run advantage against Green Bay, which isn't huge, but
Right.
it's better than you might expect given that matchup with Green Bay. The better reputation, the better record, and all that. So 4,600 is worth a look. The thing is, he didn't get any targets last week,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll have to see if that's part of his game. If it is, then I think you could be in a great spot on DraftKings, and that'd be a nice bonus if he caught a few balls.
Yeah, for sure. You say he's 4,600. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really good value. I mean, he's not going to have to do that much at that price. So, yeah, I don't know a whole lot about him, but I mean, Green Bay is definitely capable, especially in the red zone. The red zone defense has not been very good this year, so in the red zone, you could see him getting a touchdown for sure.
Yep, excellent. All right, so before we hit the wide receivers, we want to invite folks, if you do want to grab those lineups, then join us at dfscoachtalk.com, whichever length of time membership you want. Grab a 3-day pass if you want to just try us for the weekend and get the Sunday and Monday football lineups. Any membership you get, you're going to get all of our sports. So you get the playoff baseball lineups that Crash and Coach are putting out. You get the preseason lineups, NBA, and then we'll be ready to kick off the regular season on Tuesday. We got our golf lineups. So you get all the lineups, those full lineups on FanDuel and Yahoo for all those sports. The full coach's clipboard on DraftKings for the main slate on Sunday. Absolutely smashed last week. We had Kadarius Toney locked in as our value play for 4,000, among others. Just a great week. So we're really getting hot here. Jump in with us, dfscoachtalk.com. Once you sign up, we will send you an email and invite you into our Discord. Thank you to the new members we're getting here towards the end of this week as we're getting ready for basketball. Really excited to keep it going, get off to a hot start in NBA as well. All right, Josh, let's talk about some wide receivers. Talk to me about who you like here.
Yeah, so going back to my quarterback pick, I'm going to pair up Patrick Mahomes with Tyreek Hill, 8,500 on DraftKings. He's one of the best matchups on the slate against Washington. They've allowed the second most fantasy points to wide receivers. He's the highest projected scoring wide receiver this week by Pro Football Focus. Now, he is listed as questionable, so we're going to have to keep an eye on his injury status on Sunday. But if he does play, I look for him to rebound after he was pretty well held in check by Buffalo on Sunday night. But with that being said, he still saw 13 targets and 12 targets in his last 2 games. So he's definitely getting the targets.
Yep. Yeah, he is. And he runs 54% of his routes in the slot, according to PFF. And Washington has not been good in that department. Guys
No.
who live there, Keenan Allen, 9 for 100 against them. Sterling Shepard, 9 for 94. How about Cole Beasley, 11 for 98? So definitely love the matchup. Again, the motivation for these guys is going to be big. I think they come out and they try to lay it on them early and often. And KC is one of those teams, they can be an even bigger favorite than 7 points and go crush a team by 35, but they will keep passing it. We saw that last year against the Jets. So, don't be scared about the blowout with the Chiefs, and Mahomes isn't going to get his. I think he probably will, and I think Hill is a great pick if he's healthy. If not, McCole Hardman at 4,200 becomes a really nice option on DraftKings.
Yeah, we only have to look back 2 weeks to see that example with Philly.
Yes, exactly.
Going out, and he had 5 touchdowns, and Tyreek had 3. So
yeah, over 50 fantasy points, amazing. All right, my first pick here, Keenan Allen. Just mentioned him, and speaking of touchdowns, he only has 1 on the season. Mike Williams has 6. I think Herbert needs to keep Allen happy here. Get him a couple against Baltimore in this potential high-scoring game. We mentioned the great passing matchup, and he runs most of his routes in the slot, of course. Really strong rating, 94.3 rating against Young, their primary slot corner. And we have Mike Williams also questionable. So even if he plays, if he's limited, I think Allen might get a few more looks because of that. 6,400 right in that sweet spot for him on DraftKings, where he can easily get 10 catches, 100 yards, get that bonus, and you're looking at 30 fantasy points if he gets in the end zone. So I like Keenan this week.
Yeah, no, I like that call. 6,400, that's a great price too. So for my second wide receiver, I'm looking at Cooper Kupp. He's 7,900 on DraftKings. I'm going to pair him up with Matthew Stafford, like I talked about earlier, going up against this giant secondary that they've gave up 302 yards and 3 touchdowns to Dak Prescott last week. Kupp is the 3rd highest projected scoring wide receiver on the slate, behind only Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. He's 1,100 cheaper than Devontae Adams and 600 cheaper than Tyreek, so you're getting a little bit of a value there. And he's kind of come back to earth a little bit after he started out on fire the first couple weeks, but I look for him to put up similar numbers to what we saw earlier this year, this week.
They are an awesome combination, no doubt about it. Speaking of pairing up with your quarterback, if you do run a lineup out there with Mac Jones, you could pair him up with Jacoby Myers. Great way to attack Dallas, not only in the passing game, but in the slot. Bunch of guys have really crushed them there. The Tampa Bay guys, Brown and Godwin, took turns there. Keenan had over 100 yards. And we just saw what Kadarius Toney did. He moved in and out, but 10 for 189. So Myers at 5,500, real nice option. He's not a big touchdown guy either, but he doesn't have to be at that price. So he's a nice mid-tier option.
Yeah. I like Myers too. He was my 3rd wide receiver also. So.
All right, one more of a value play before we go to tight ends.
Yeah, so here we go with this rivalry. We've got Randall Cobb.
Okay.
3,900 on DraftKings. If you ask just about any Bears fan besides Aaron Rodgers who they hate, I think they're probably going to tell you that it's going to be Randall Cobb. So he's had some really big games against Chicago over the years. After what happened last week with Devontae Adams and his monster game, I think Chicago's going to probably try and double team him and make sure that he's not the one that beats him this week. And so that's going to open up some opportunities for Randall Cobb. And like I said, he's kind of been a Bears killer over the years. And I think he's going to be a little bit lower owned and a really good tournament play for value.
Yeah, man, Adams was a monster. He was locked in for us last week. Yeah, Adams and Toney was a nice combo.
Definitely.
My value play here I'm looking at is T.Y. Hilton. If he plays again, it's Friday night. He's questionable. He's trying to come back from this nerve issue in his neck. But in that matchup against Houston, big favorites, and he's he loves to play Houston, and look at what these outside receivers have done against them this year. The Jacksonville guys were great against them, both catching touchdowns. DJ Moore, 8 for 126, Diggs, 7 for 114. Their fantasy points allowed, it's not as big as you would expect, I think, just because of a lack of touchdowns.
Right.
And we know that can change in a heartbeat. And Hilton's a home run hitter. So he's on my radar. Do you think he's worth a look?
Yeah, I definitely like T.Y. Hilton. In fact, just before we started the show, I was looking at this article from 2019 where Jonathan Joseph, the Texans cornerback, had said a comment, something about T.Y. Hilton was a clown or something. And so T.Y. Hilton showed up that year for the game in Houston wearing a clown mask. And then he proceeded to basically clown the Texans defense. He talked about it in the post game like that too. So he's had pretty much ever since then, he's had a vendetta against Houston. And I think that if he plays his normal amount of snaps, that he could have another really nice game at a lower ownership and good value.
Yeah, and I think if people have their mind set on playing Pittman after he looked solid last week, then that pivot could be huge because you'll save a bunch of money as well.
Right. Yep.
All right, let's hit some tight ends here. Crash, where are you looking at that position?
Yeah, so for tight end, I'm looking at Mark Andrews. He had his best performance of the year, Monday night. Got a really good matchup again this week against the Chargers. They've allowed the second most fantasy points to tight ends. He saw 13 targets on Monday, and I think that he's probably going to see double-digit targets again this Sunday, and this is a favorable matchup. So,
yeah, it really is a great matchup. And Njoku just smashed him. He was wide open on a lot of his catches. And Andrews, wow, what a game he had. I like Andrews as well. If I'm going to go somebody else a little bit cheaper, lower owned, Tyler Higbee is worth considering. Giants giving up the 7th most fantasy points to tight ends. And if your guy Stafford doesn't hit Cup with all the touchdowns, maybe he'll get one. Giants have given up 4, I believe. He only got 2 targets last week, but he did get a touchdown. That's the big concern for me with Higbee is the volume. Only 5, 6 or less most weeks. So that's a guy who, if everything clicks, maybe he could be the guy this week if you want to get a much lower ownership than somebody like Andrews.
What's his price? How much is he?
4,400.
4,400. Okay, that's not bad. I mean, with a lot of these value tight ends, you're just trying to get a touchdown, and if you get a touchdown, you're in pretty good shape. So, Hunter Henry's going to be my guy for the value play. 3,900 on DraftKings. He scored a touchdown in each of his last 2 games. He's been more involved in the offense lately. His targets have gone up each week. He's got another favorable matchup against Dallas this week. They're the 22nd in fantasy points allowed to tight ends. And so for 3,900, it's a really good value play. And like I said, we're just looking for a touchdown basically from him.
Yes, indeed. Value play for me, Ricky Seals-Jones, 3,000. I think he'll be a little bit chalky this week. Again, that's okay. If you go to a $3,000 player, you're looking for 3x on DraftKings. So if he gets what he got last week, 5 for 41, you're there. If he gets in the end zone, then you're thrilled. And KC has given up the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends. Again, high total, 7-point underdogs. They're going to have to throw it a bunch. Dawson Knox just made them look pretty bad.
Right.
The Philly guys combined for 11 catches, 116 and a score against KC. So that's really a way to attack KC. Their defense is struggling. So nothing wrong with getting more exposure to this. At least some. Get some exposure to this game.
Right.
You don't go Mahomes to Hill. You can get a player like this in there, get a piece of the action.
Yeah, especially before Zach Ertz gets in there. So, and he can't play this week since he played last night. So I did look that up.
Yep, that's right. All right, defenses here. I think before you give your first pick, I think defense is a challenging one this week. In fact, I want to invite the viewers to give their comment on the on YouTube. Drop it in the comment section. Who's your pick for defense and why? Um, I just think it's a real challenge. So let's discuss a couple possibilities and go from there.
So for my first option at defense, I'm looking at the Packers defense. They're 3,600 on DraftKings. They're sixth in total defense. They're 10th against the pass, 11th against the run. Going up against the Bears offense that has kind of struggled all season. They're actually last in total yards per game, last in passing yards per game, and 30th in points per game at 16.8. Dealing with the injuries, obviously with David Montgomery out, and now they're likely to be without their top backup halfback and Damian Williams, who had a nice game last week in Vegas. And on top of all that, Allen Robinson, basically their wide receiver one, hasn't practiced most of this week. Now, he was limited today, so there's a chance that he might play still, but he's going to be listed as questionable. And I feel like this Bears offense could struggle against the Packers without some of their key weapons. And I feel like it's going to put even more pressure on Justin Fields, who's, kind of trying to be the hero for Chicago, basically, and the Packers' reign over the Bears. So,
yeah, the offense looks pretty vanilla to me. I think Chicago really needs to shake it up. They're in trouble because they're not putting up enough yards or points. So that could work for sure. I'm looking at Cincinnati as a possibility. They've got Detroit favorites on the road, total under 50. Detroit has been friendly to opposing defenses, and they are 25th in points, 24th in yards. Goff has given up 7 turnovers in 5 weeks here. So I think you can feel pretty solid about Cincinnati, getting a decent return there. 3,400 is not bad for that type of matchup.
Yeah, not bad at all. And Detroit's got Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Quentin Cephas, not Devontae Adams, so
that's right.
That's going to make a big difference too.
Absolutely.
So for my second defense, I'm looking at Carolina. They're only 2,900 on DraftKings. They've been pretty solid all year. They had the one bad game against Philly, but outside of that, they've had like 8, 9, 12, and around that area of fantasy points per game. And they've allowed the second fewest points per game at 17.4. So solid defense. I actually think that Dalvin Cook coming back could hinder the Vikings offense a little bit because they've gotten that rhythm with Madison and the receivers, and Cook can kind of take away from that somewhat. So I think, and I think that the Vikings are going to struggle a little bit more too against that Carolina defense and secondary, because they have a very strong secondary and their pass rush is very strong too. So you could see the Vikings struggling quite a bit on offense if they're not able to keep it balanced.
Yeah, I've been looking at Carolina this week too. I do like that price, 2,900. One of the hesitations I have is that Minnesota hasn't given up many points to opposing defense because they take care of the ball pretty well. But they have had a couple low-scoring games recently. So I could see it playing out well. Like you said, Carolina has had some big plays, strong pass rush. So they're definitely the cheapest defense that I'm looking at seriously.
Yeah.
And then the other team I want to mention here is the Colts. They've got the big 10-point edge in Vegas with a total of only 43.5, which puts Houston at a very low implied point total. And they have given up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing defenses. Houston has. By the way, that's the second most on this slate, because if you look at the rankings, the teams who are first, second, third, and fourth and giving up big points to opposing defenses, they're not on this slate. So Houston and Detroit are two of the best matchups there, just by the numbers. And the Houston offense, 29th in points, 29th in yards. And their center, Justin Britt, is out this week. But, they really turned it around last week against New England. Davis Mills, big day, 3 touchdowns. So that's one that I'm kind of going back and forth on. What is the real situation here with Houston and Mills? So there's another one where let's get some feedback from the viewers. Out of these 4 defenses, who's your favorite? Do you have another pick that you like? If so, why? Let us know. We'd love to interact and get your feedback. While you're there, give us that thumbs up if you don't mind. We're going to continue to put out these podcasts every slate in front of the paywall. We've covered all the showdown games and the main slates. We're going to keep that rolling. Hit that alert button so you know when the podcasts are going to come out. When they do, you'll know about them. Josh and I are going to record the primetime podcast, of course, for those Sunday night and Monday night games. That'll be out later this weekend. So we love the interaction there and the support. We appreciate that. Josh, any final thoughts here before the main slate?
Yeah, just real quick. I just want to go back to what we were talking about with the defenses, because I remember over on FanDuel, the Colts were my top defense. So a lot of it just comes down to the price and it's different on different sites. So could have a top defense be one on one site and another on another site. So for me, I'm definitely looking at on FanDuel, I'm looking at using the Colts on defense.
Yeah, I like that. Good point. And Yahoo pricing can be very different as well. Mm-hmm. So we do analyze each site differently with the different scoring and the different pricing. So jump in with us again, dfscoachtalk.com if you want to get these lineups. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on Twitter at dfscoachtalk. That'll do it for week 6 in the main slate. Do join us for the primetime show. Great work, Mr. Birthday Man, Josh. Appreciate that. On behalf of Crash Davis and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hanson. We'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.